Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. 4 soldiers in Trinidad and Tobago detained over theft of money during DSS raid. This story takes the lead in our 955th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Friday, 2nd October 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. 4 Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force TTDF members were on Wednesday detained for questioning into video footage showing one of them allegedly stuffing stacks of money into his tactical uniform during the raid on the Drug Susu headquarters in La Joquita last Tuesday. Several senior investigators said the 4 men were picked up for questioning by officers of the Professional Standards Bureau of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service after instructions were given by Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Sources familiar with the investigation said they were picked up at Teteron Barracks in Chagaramas shortly after 2 p.m. on Wednesday and taken to the PSB office to be interviewed. A Sergeant 39, 2 Lance Corporals 30 and 31 and a Corporal 29 who were part of the Special Operations Response Team SORT raiding unit were taken in. Contacted late on Wednesday, Griffith confirmed the men were in police custody. He said he had been in constant contact with the PSB head senior superintendent Samaru and had written to him on September 30th after the footage of the officer had gone viral after it was reported to the media. Griffith said, I immediately contacted the head of the SORT, Sergeant Hernandez, who confirmed that they were not police officers but soldiers from the TTDF. The names of at least 2 corporals were later identified along with their regimental numbers. Senior investigators said they will be awaiting instructions from the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP, on the way forward after the interviews. What might be particularly complicated in this matter, according to a senior source, is that there were no reports made by anyone in the house of any money stolen. If this is so, we have no victim and then there's no crime. There's also the call by the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago for Griffith to investigate whether there was a legal requirement to obtain a warrant before the search on DSS was initiated and claims of abuse by police officers on civilians at the apartment. The countdown is on for Patriotic Energies and Technology Company to sort out the contractual obligations with respect to Trinidad and Tobago's Point-a-Pierre refinery. Joel Julian of CNC3's Business Watch tells us more.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says the government needs to take a firm and clear decision on the sale of the Point-a-Pierre refinery. And as such, it has now given Patriotic Energies and Technologies Limited a deadline to get its business in order.
We expect to get specific responses in a specific time, and if by the end of October there is no conclusion to the way forward, and by conclusion I mean contractual conclusion between the state and Patriotic, then we will have to look at other options.
Speaking at the Spotlight on the Economy on Monday, Dr. Rowley said discussions on the $1 billion contractual agreement for the refinery sale are not open-ended.
We hope that we can work out something because we would much rather have our efforts that have gone on for over here, I think it was, come to a satisfactory conclusion, but it is not open-ended. So Professor Brooks and the national community, these discussions are not open-ended.
In September last year, Finance Minister Colm Imbert announced that Patriotic, a company owned by the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, was a preferred bidder to own and operate the refinery. Patriotic offered upfront US $700 million as a cash consideration and US $300 million for the company's non-core assets. Ozzie Warwick, one of Patriotic's directors, said the company will make the deadline, stating that closure of the acquisition is critical for the country's economy.
We feel very positive that this matter can be resolved and we can really get down to having boots on the ground.
Warwick said Patriotic has been ready to seal the deal since before the August 10th general election.
We see this acquisition process as being critical to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, especially in this period of time where there is almost no growth in the economy and where there is a real challenge for foreign exchange.
Joel Julian, CNC3 Business Watch.
According to the Trinidad and Tobago's finance minister, there will be no devaluation of the TT dollar at this time. Joel Brown of TV6 News reports.
The exchange rate averaged 6.8 Trinidad and Tobago dollars to $1 on Monday, as the government held its pre-budget virtual event from the Hyatt Regency Hotel. Finance Minister Colm Imbert said the central bank has been working over the past few weeks at his request on a model on the net effect of devaluing the TT dollar at this time, as he spoke of the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And the increase in government revenue is minimal. Minimal. You're talking less than $100 million, 30, 40 million US dollars is the numbers I saw. But inflation will go from 1% to 6% or 7% immediately, and the standard of living in Trinidad and Tobago would decline immediately. So we continue at this time, now that foreign inflows are very low, to believe that devaluation is not the answer at this time.
The Trinidad and Tobago dollar was last devalued in the 1980s. The finance minister said the COVID-19 crisis has resulted in lower oil and natural gas production and the depressed prices of both commodities, which has resulted in much less inflows of US dollars than in 2018 and 2019.
So if you devalue, what happens? You convert your US dollars to TT dollars at a higher rate. You get more TT dollars. But if you're getting minimal inflows of US dollars, it's insufficient to counteract the effects of devaluation, which are increased cost of raw materials for your manufacturing sector, increased cost of food imports.
He said trade unions would, in his words, quite naturally want to get wage increases because the cost of living would escalate.
We continue to believe that no useful purpose will be served by devaluation, especially at this time when US dollar inflows are extremely low, and they are extremely low as a result of COVID-19.
The president of the Bankers Association, Karen Debesi, who also spoke at the pre-budget event, said she was very pleased at the finance minister's announcement.
And I think a very solid statement to give certainty and to engender confidence in the business community is your statement, no useful purpose to be served by devaluation.
But she also said there's one area that is of concern to her.
In a situation where net international reserves still at healthy levels but trending down, an external debt to GDP ratio that's trending up is a trend that we need to keep our eyes on.
Joel Brown, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Amendments to the Auctioneer and Corporation Tax Bill, among several others, were approved by the National Assembly of Guyana on Tuesday, even as the parliamentary opposition was a no-show for the debate and the subsequent passage of the bills. More in this HGP Nightly News report with Wendell Badri.
On Tuesday, a statement emanating from the APNU AFC parliamentary opposition accused the PPP government of fiddling to find millions of dollars for its friends and families through the National 2020 Emergency Budget. The parliamentary opposition explained in its missive that the 2020 budget had been passed despite several interventions the party made in what it deemed as the biased allocation of financial resources of the country. The party further stated that the PPP government is seeking to lay before the National Assembly matters which have already been extensively debated during the course of the budget presentation.
Bills belatedly seek to have debates on the matters which we already debated. But what they do now is that they extract those measures which seek to show a soft side of an extremely harsh budget for the ordinary Guyanese man and woman.
At Tuesday's sitting of the National Assembly, the APNU AFC opposition was a no-show.
The APNU and AFC will not be part of another attempt by the PPP to deceive the Guyanese people. In the circumstance, we believe that the interests of the Guyanese people will not be served by our attending and further debating again measures in this anti-working class budget on Tuesday, 29th of September, 2020.
The party in an earlier statement had referred to the emergency 2020 budget as a colossal disappointment, citing that it did not cater for the poor or average man or woman of the country and therefore will worsen the standard of living of the Guyanese people.
The APANUC is appalled by the callous treatment of ordinary Guyanese by the PPP regime, particularly public servants, our healthcare workers, our teachers, and our joint services. Now that we have completed the budget debate and completed a considerable amount of the consideration of the estimates, APNU-AFC coalition initial reaction to the budget has been confirmed and vindicated. This budget is effective, divisive, and deceptive.
Further, the party noted that the budget is aimed at benefiting those who financed and supported the PPP during its campaign for office.
The Guyanese people have no doubt that the budget is one designed to benefit PPP financiers. They show their contempt for the hard-working, ordinary people of Guyana and bloat the PPP fat cats who are lining up to cash in at the Treasury.
Budget 2020 had been a primary focus of the PPP regime since the party's ascension to government in August. Prior to that, the last budget for the country had been tabled and presented in the National Assembly in December 2018, shortly before the passing of the historical motion of confidence. Subsequent to the holding of elections, an electoral crisis ensued for roughly 5 months, concluding on August 2, 2020, when the PPP was declared the winner and President-elect Irfan Ali was sworn in. Wendell Badri for HGP Nightly News.
Another sitting of the House of Assembly in St. Lucia was marred by partisan wrangling and controversy over the interpretation of parliamentary rules. Joachim Duplessis of HTS News Force reports.
It all began when Prime Minister Alain Chastanet decided to change the priority of the order paper to bring up the controversial COVID-19 Prevention and Control Bill for debate. The proposed law was originally listed as the last item on the order paper.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave of the House to suspend Standing Order 9, which is the order of business, to allow the House to deal with the COVID-19 bill at this stage of the sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that Standing Order 9 be suspended to allow the Honorable Prime Minister to deal with COVID-19 bill at this stage of the sitting.
There were a litany of calls from a number of stakeholders to defer the bill to allow for greater consultation. The leader of the opposition, Philip J. Pierre, attempted in vain to postpone the debate.
Mr. Speaker, the SNHTA has asked that this bill be deferred. I would think the Bar Association also, I think the government should defer it at least for some level of discussion. If it is only the opposition, I understand that behavior. But it's not only the opposition, other people have asked for its deferral.
Viewfort South MP and former Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony questioned whether the House could rearrange the sequence of the pieces of legislation on the order paper in the middle of the House sitting. Following an extended break, the sitting resumed with the Speaker ruling that altering the running order did not violate House rules.
Standing Order 9 states, unless the House otherwise direct. In other words, you could read it to mean the business of each day of the House will be as follows until such time the House decides to change it. And that can be done by the House authorizing a suspension and changing it. And on that basis, I am now ordered or agreed and granting leave to the Prime Minister to move his motion.
Joachim Duplessis, HTS News Force.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.